Hey guys, I'm Jim, WT1W, and you're watching FEPLabs Radio. Thanks for stopping by. Appreciate it. So today I want to share with you my CW journey. So the other thing that came up when we started talking about CW was that the Smoking Ape and I have a little bit of a contest going. I'm taking it seriously. He's kind of like, yeah, bing bong, I'm going to learn it. I started this because the Smoking Ape said he bought a CW trainer. And I'm like, you know what? I need to get off my behind and start working on this. So that's kind of what my motivation was. And my goal is to be the first to make a CW contact before the ape does. I started seriously working on my CW a couple weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago. I joined the Long Island CW Club. I have not used any of their lessons yet, but I have several resources I found that are very useful, including the learncwonline.net website, as well as Long Island CW. There are multiple resources you can use, and that is for helping you to learn code. The thing about Morse code, in my opinion, is it's one thing to send it, and it's another thing to receive it. And you have to get those two skills working together. So right now I can send, I don't know, 6, 8, 10 different letters. And I'm working on copying those letters and getting my copying skills down. So what I wanted to share with you was some of the things I found, some of the tools I've gotten to help me learn CW, both software tools, websites, as well as hardware that is going to be required for you to do Morse code. Okay, as you can see, I have several things laid out here, and we're going to talk about each one of them individually. But going through the list of things, we have a Vibroplex straight key. We have a Puda double paddle. We have an official original J38 key. This was widely used from like probably before World War II on in the military for sure. There's a couple different variations of these. This is the one I have. Over here is a Bencher double paddle. Interesting fact, Vibroplex bought Bencher about 9 or 10 years ago. So Bencher and Vibroplex are now the same company, but they kept the Bencher name and kept basically their products from what I understand. These keys run about $200-ish a piece. This I got off of eBay for a little less than 200, maybe about 140 or 150. This I bought new from Vibroplex, and it was a little over 200. I can't remember exactly. And I will put links for everything in the dingus below. So these run about $80, $60, $80 for one that's in kind of sad shape. For one that's in really good looking shape, they can go for more. I've seen them over 200. And while it's a cool key, because it's, you know, original equipment from World War II era, I don't know that it's worth $200, but you know, you let your conscience be your guide on that one. I think I paid about 80 for this, and I cleaned it up because it was in sad shape when I got it. And then over here, and this is, I feel, an essential piece of learning CW as well. This is a keyer. So this will let me practice sending CW. This will let me, it has practice modes where it plays CW and I have to key back the letter or something like that. I haven't used that mode yet, so I'm not entirely sure how that one works. And we'll go through that in a second. This runs off of an internal rechargeable battery, and it comes with a USB charging cable. The Puda key was about $50, $60 on Amazon, and it came in this precious little plastic case. In one way, the Puda is a little different and fancier than the Vibroplex or the Benchers, because I can flip this switch here, and you can barely see it, but I can change it between DAs on the left side and DITs on the right, or DITs on the left and DAs on the right. Can't do that with any of these other keys. You'd have to change it in software, but for the paddles, for the paddle, obviously. So let me clear this off and let's take a look at each of these one at a time and see some of the things that make up a CW key, whether it be a straight key like these two old guys, well, this old guy or this guy, or these two paddles like so. All right, these are straight keys. Again, this is a World War II era key. This is current, brand new. Just bought this a week or so ago. The things that define a straight key, and we'll start with the Vibroplex actually, is the way you send is by popping the button up and down. There are only two wires connecting a straight key. And so as you touch the contact right there, it makes the connection and sends the tone. How fast it sends the tone is completely dependent on how fast you press and release the key. And we need to talk about timing, and that's a thing. So when we talk about sending CW, if you're using your radio, for example, most radios will ask what speed you're sending, and you need to give it a target number. That determines the timing that's required between letters so that they stay together, as opposed to a separate word where there's a little more space between them. And there's kind of a standard for that. Farnsworth spacing is what that is called, I believe. And that's a more advanced subject, and we're not going to cover that in the video. But when you're using a straight key, the timing is completely on you, absolutely on you. So if you're sending, you know, da, it, da, that's very slow. And if you're keyer, whether you're using a practice keyer like the Puda key I showed earlier, or using your radio, is not going to understand what you're doing. And no one listening to you is going to be able to understand if you're sending super slow, obviously. Long Island CW recommends you start at 12 words a minute. The ARRL has a document that wants you to learn at 5 words a minute. And in my opinion, 5 words a minute is so slow that if I'm sending at 5 words a minute, somebody's going to fall asleep or leave and go get a pizza while they're waiting for me to finish saying CQ. So I think that's entirely too slow. Temporarily Offline and I were talking about this a week or so ago, and he made the comment that he learned slower than 20, and it was harder for him to make the adjustment and speed up as he went. So his suggestion to me was to learn at the speed you want to send at. Average speed is probably somewhere around 20 for most people. I'm going to go with that, and that's what I've set my target speed value at. So when I use the keyer, and we'll demo that in a second, I need to be moving this along at a certain speed, or the keyer will kind of mismatch letters. If I take too long between the dits and das, for example, it's going to think if I held a dit too long, it's going to be it will become a da. So an E will become a T instead of an E, that kind of thing. So timing is critical. And with a manual key, timing is you. So these keys work the exact same way. The differences are the adjustments and everything. I think this key was a Navy key. This is not what's called a Navy knob, but the reason I think this is a Navy key, this key, and I've done a video on this key like 4 years ago. It was one of my first videos. This bar, when you close this, sends constant tone. And this is for what's called a sounder, which I believe is a thing that alerts all stations by sending a tone out to all stations. Something like that. That's not a function that you're going to use as a ham doing CW. It's just part of the way this key was made and the genesis of this particular key. All these keys are adjustable. So, for example, there are locking knobs on most of them. Basically you have the pivot here, and we want to center our bar. The bar here in the center is what this whole key pivots on, right? And then this up here has a locking adjustment on it, and we can loosen or tighten this up. This knob back here determines how far the key moves to make and break our contacts. So you can see as I move that now, that is a lot farther apart. This adjusts the spring tension, so how hard it is to press the key and how fast the spring returns. This is where we make our connections. This particular key has these slots that were like this when I got the key. I think these were just guides to run the cables through initially, like a strain relief kind of setup or something. These are not actually connected to anything on the key. The base of this particular key is what I think is called Bakelite. It's some sort of plastic substance. So to use this, you'd want to mount this firmly on on a heavier bass. Otherwise, you know, if you're really getting at it, this is going to bounce around. So that is the adjustments on this guy. The actual connection wires go here in these holes, and then you tighten this down. So if you're going to wire this, you want to put a ferrule on the end of the wire, because you can't use a spade terminal with this particular key. So that is the basic J38 key. If we set this one aside, let's take a little closer look at the Vibroplex. So the first thing when you handle a key like this is this thing is hefty. This weighs about 3 pounds. Vibroplex actually makes a different one called the Vibro Cube, I think, that is 6 pounds of steel underneath it. So it's also a little taller. It's a chunky boy. But this is chunky enough, certainly. And this has the same kind of adjustments. So here's our basic spindle here, our axis, our axle that the key rides up and down on. And then we can adjust back here. There's a locking nut. And then I can adjust this here and tighten the key down so far that it won't bounce, or bring it back up. Look right here. And you can see that distance there. So it requires a whole lot more movement of your finger or hand to actually send. I've noticed that I tend to like it pretty tight, very close, so there's not a lot of movement required. Pretty close to where I had it. And you can see that it's not touching, but it's darn near touching. It doesn't take much to make a contact. And apparently I didn't have these tightened down either. On the back here, we have these little knurled knobs and our actual posts to connect our key to. If I had one complaint about this beautiful key, is that this is somewhat of a weird way to make a connection, but there it is. So I got this wire and put spade lugs on it, and there you go. On this key, we also have the spring tension adjustable as well as on the other key. So that is the basic Vibroplex key. Now, if we move him out of the way, and let's take a look at our paddles. The paddles work differently than a straight key does. So depending on software settings, radio settings, key settings, in the case of this guy, one paddle will hit Da and one paddle will hit Dit. And that's all it does. All that paddle will do is send continuous Das, for example, and this one will send continuous Dits. This also has adjustments here for the distance that the contact goes. You can see it right there. And this one over here, I don't think these are adjusted the same. This one feels a little very tight, like it may be touching right now. Hard to tell. I adjusted it the other day, but I think I forgot to tighten it down. So you can see this key here is a lot more play than this one. And we'll know when I hook it up to the trainer, because if it's touching, it's going to beep at us. It sure feels like it's going to. This is the Puda key. This one came off of Amazon. And this is all that came from Amazon. There's a cable with it, and it came in this box, packed in foam like so. It has instructions on how to use it and how to adjust it. And this key is adjustable as well. Same kind of deal. This is a little different. They sent a wrench with this. So there's a little wrench to loosen this outside bolt. And then here in the center, right there, is an Allen key. So you loosen the bolt, and then you can adjust it with the Allen key. And once again, that sets your distance that the paddles will travel. The difference between these two is in price, obviously. The other thing on this key, that little switch right there, that little slide switch, lets you flip which key does Da and which key does the Dits, which is cool. Now, the downside of this key is that it's small, which is also kind of its upside. This wouldn't be bad to take portable. I've been practicing in my truck at lunch. I usually sit in my truck at lunch and read a book or something. So I've brought my trainer with me. I hook up this little guy and work with it. One thing that, and these are magnetic on the base, the Puda is. This is not. This is just a very heavy, again, about 2 or 3 pounds. Weighted base, I bought this from Gigaparts, and this is a piece of steel. It was all the same color, but this is where I've slid the magnets on and off because these magnets in here are serious. And he just sits on there like that. And as you can see, he ain't going nowhere. And then, of course, you plug in your cable right here on the back side to your keyer or your radio, whichever you're using. And then you can key. And as you can see, that doesn't move either, even with me getting slap happy on it. So pretty neat. That's the basic difference between a straight key and a paddle. There are a couple different kinds of keys that I don't have that I haven't shown you. There is a single paddle, and the difference is the way the single paddle works. One way is da and the other way is dit. It's just one paddle. That's it. Just one paddle. So da and dit. The other thing that is available for key is something called a bug. And a bug is very strange, and it's been around for probably 100 years, literally. And a bug is a sideways keyer, and it has something similar to a knob on it, like you would see on a straight key, but you do it this way. And the bug has a weighted end. It's long like our straight key. Let me pull up our straight key. It has some length on it. It's probably longer than this. And there's a weighted mechanism at the back that's adjustable, and a spring here that this presses against as you go sideways. And when you go one direction, it just sends repeating dits from mechanical action. The spring just keeps popping it. It's like a magnetic release thing, and then the spring bounces it back, and you hold it, and it just dit. And then the other way is just straight DAs. And bugs are not recommended for beginners. The other thing I've understood about the bug keys is that they don't really go slow. The slowest speed that anyone recommends for using a bug is 20 words a minute. And right now, 20 words a minute of me sending and understanding what I'm hearing is at probably my threshold. So I doubt that I will ever have a bug. Maybe, maybe not, who knows. But that's a bug. That's a kind of key. One other difference that I wanted to mention is what's called iambic A and iambic B. I am not an expert on that. I barely understand that. But basically, first of all, it's only applicable to paddles. And as far as I understand, it would only be applicable to double paddles. I could be wrong on that. I'm a little fuzzy. Doesn't apply to straight keys in any way. When you buy a double paddle, you'll see that it's iambic. They call all these things iambic. The way the two modes work is a little different. Iambic A, I understand, I think is the more common, but what'll happen is you can press down one key and press the other key at the same time and let up, and then it'll throw in that dit or da as appropriate. Don't understand the iambic stuff yet, have not experimented with it a lot. I'm not an expert on it at all. I barely understand it. I haven't even fooled with trying to use it, but it was worth a mention. There's some additional functionality in paddles. There's also a mode called automatic keying where you squeeze the keys, and depending on when you let up, so I squeeze and I get da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da, something like that. And that's another mode. That has to be supported specifically in either your keyer, if you're using an external keyer, or in your radio to do what automatic mode or squeeze keying is designed for. And there are other videos on YouTube that talk about that specifically. And you can see all of these, you can find this stuff all over eBay. There are tons of vintage, old, used keys on eBay in conditions that vary from something like this, other than it's got my fingerprints all over it, to the keys that, you know, look sketchier than this guy does. So that is kind of an overview of CW keys. Required. Can't do CW without it. I mean, I guess you could sit there and tap two wires together if you're fast. All right, so this is the Putakig CW trainer. There are multiple trainers available online. A lot of radios have a built-in keyer where you can disable actually transmitting, so you can use the radio to practice keying with. I haven't hooked this up to my Flex yet. I've hooked it up to a Kenwood TS2000, it doesn't show me what I'm keying. So it's great for practice and sending, but you kind of need to know what you're sending. Use the onboard one in most radios. I don't know about particular radios, but there are a number of these kind of things available. The Morse is available. There is CW Hotline, I believe, is one. And again, I'll put links to all this stuff in the description below. This one was about $60. The one Smoke and 8 bought one, and his is an MCT 73, I believe, is the model number on it. And they all do about the same thing. A few of them, like the Morse I know, have some fancier functions. So if you have a group together, you can connect over the internet with a buddy, or I believe a group of people, and practice over the internet without even using a radio, which would be great for something like a classroom situation, like with the Long Island CW Club. So the Putakig, you turn it on, and there is a backlight on this, but I turned it off for the video because with the backlight on, you can't see anything. And the first thing it comes up with, and I have it set this way as a default, it will come up and ask you what kind of key you're using. So we're going to tell it we're going to use a straight key. And now we're ready. Then we just basically hook up our key to the device. And you can laugh along with me as I try to send anything that makes sense. So this is the timing thing. See, it's set at 20 words a minute, which I'm not real good with a straight key that fast yet. And interestingly enough, Long Island CW Club kind of wants you to use straight key to get started. This is also not the most optimal setup to get all this in camera between the wires and the trainer. So let's try it again. Yeah, see, that's so fast. It's not, that's the timing thing. It's not picking up. I've had this set at 12, which is what I've been kind of working up to. Very hard. Managed to get a Q, didn't get the C. Nope. Because I'm holding it too long on the dashes. And if you look right here on the screen as I whack the key, that's what it thinks the character is. So a dash is a T. I mean, to hit this with a DIT, you've really got to have this fast. And I was screwing with this when I was showing you guys how it adjusts. So I can tell right now I still have it too far away, which is part of my issue at this point. Let me see if I can. So that's tight all the way where it's just nonstop making a tone. I hope you can hear that tone. I think I can turn the volume. In any case, that's the point I was making about timing. It probably shouldn't be doing it, but I've been mixing up my practice with the straight key and with the paddles. So let's take a look at the paddles. We want to change this to use the paddles now. So we're going to go over to our settings and hit enter and scroll through this until we get to our key setting. I'm going to set that to 2 paddles. Pop out. And these are the other modes I was telling you about on this. Let's take a look at these real quick. So there's code view, QCW view, which I believe, yeah, is going to send us the different Q codes. If we go down to listen test, then we can set what kind of test we want. Numbers, letters, punctuation, letters and numbers, all the characters. QC words or prosigns, I think is what those are called. Whole sentences. So let's just do letters. And this is where I would sit here and listen to this and practice copying. All I would do is turn this thing on and then start writing letters as I hear them. There's no keying into this one. It's just simply listening in this mode. And you can see up here, it has the speed set. So we go back to menu. That was listen test, CW practice. There's that mode. And then we have free input, which is what I've been playing with just to get used to it a little bit. And if we use the paddle, yep, that's way too tight. Way too tight. So if you use the paddle, there we go. Apparently touching it, it's so tight that if I barely touch it, it's going to go. So this is with dits on the left side with your thumb, and DAs are on the left, and that is so tight. I doubt I can get it to work without adjusting it. There we go. The timing was off. The other thing with a paddle key is that the timing on the paddle key is related to how fast I've got the trainer set to. And this would work the same for your radio. So if your radio understands keys, and most radios have a setting for using a paddle key, depending on the radio, it may call it an L-craft or a paddle or something like that, or a bug. Bug is kind of a specific thing, but you're going to set your words per minute, and that denotes this timing between individual dits and DAs. Of course, some of the timing is based on how fast I can actually whack the paddles. Yeah, I went so fast there it didn't pick it up, so that was too fast. Too slow. Too slow. And you see here, this is also indicative of my timing is off because the keyer is putting a space between the letters, which means I'm too slow whacking the keys. So that is an overview of all of this, and that is what I have been up to the last couple weeks. So there is a quick overview of CW keys and trainers, and there are a lot of variations of keys. There are a number of places that make keys and sell them. CWMorse.us, of course, DX Engineering, Gigaparts all sell keys. There's a number of keys on Amazon. I'm perfectly happy with the Pudakig paddles that I got. The cheap $50 one works fine. That's what I started messing with until I got jonesing for a fancy key. Guys, that is all I've got in this video. I hope you liked it. Give me a thumbs up if you would. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel and ring the bell. All that stuff is in the dingus below. That way you get notified whenever I post any new videos. Thanks a lot, y'all. 73.